we like to keep it rough and raw here.
Okay.
This is a punk podcast, right?
Yeah. DIY.
Yeah, well, because Shad was talking about that earlier today, because he's always said from the very beginning, I want part of the aesthetic of this podcast is to be punk. But Miles, if you look at either of us, do you see an ounce of punk DNA within us?
The V-neck and the polo button down underneath. It just screams punk.
Yeah, I know.
Like me too, a guy whose name is Miles Smith the Fourth.
Yeah,
punk the hell out of that.
Yeah, exactly.
With a numeral after his name.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. No, but
Actually, technically, that's called an ordinal.
Oh, really? Okay, my bad.
Damn.
An ordinal.
You got
that's right. Well, so
served
this
on
is
your
the
own
thing, though, is I
podcast.
think that you've probably gone to bat over this multiple times. You're prepared. It's like every time today, even I had somebody say, "Is it Shadrach? Shadrach?" Where it's like, no, I've done this since I was 2 years old. We can have this fight.
It's Shadrach.
Yeah, Shadrach. Actually,
I've never actually heard that before.
I don't know if that's actually real.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Jeez Louise. No, but I would say that if there's anybody with a punk DNA in his body, it would be Shad, just because he wears the caps, right?
Yeah,
Because I could see the caps on a punk guy, but outside of that, I mean, the rest of the ambiance, it's not.
His beard is more punk level than ours is.
It's
so.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
if we were all college professors, obviously you would be the regular college professor. You would be perhaps somebody who would work like in STEM or something, and I would be theory guy.
Yeah. You'd be the guy who's in the basement of the history department.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't let him out.
Right next to Dr. Stewart.
That was my second office. I was down there with Dr. Stewart. Dr. Stewart gave me for Christmas. This is my second year on campus. I'm still a little baby.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was 30 yet. But Dave gave me a Nerf gun. He gave me and another colleague a Nerf gun. I was like, this is really great, but what's the occasion? He goes, because this is the fun floor.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we had Nerf wars.
I thought it was
wonderful.
to defend against all of the blurry-eyed students who make all their way all the way down to the
Yeah,
basement.
it was me and Dr. Franklin, actually.
Yeah.
He gave
okay,
us
there you go.
he gave us Nerf guns, yeah.
Yes. Dr. Franklin on the fun floor, of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Goodness. Jeez Louise. No, I mean, I don't know. I would say that you've been around for 3 years, technically, right?
So so my existence is I have sort of a spirit existence from 2014 to 2016.
Yes.
Yeah. You were an ethereal entity that sort of floated over the campus at all times.
I'd like to think angelic.
Yeah. I was thinking more of like a malaise that came down of a volcano.
No, it was a happy season.
An East Palestine sort
this
of
this
cloud.
was before the 2016 election, so like there was nothing crazy on camp. It was kind of this delightful mix of hipster and like kind of quirky. Like it wasn't as serious. Like you have all these like Republicans kids now with like the Nazi haircuts.
Yeah,
the Nick Fuentes thing.
It was so different.
It was really different. Yeah,
because
you guys were
our freshman year was your first year.
Yeah, that's right.
In 2015, and it was like totally different.
No, you guys
Changed
were
overnight.
2015, 2016 was your freshman year, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah,
So it was my second year.
Okay.
But I remember you guys.
Yeah.
And now that you're both like respectable human beings,
I wouldn't go that far, Miles.
Okay. Now that you're both human beings.
Yeah.
And so it was just a different place. And I've thought a lot about the change that happened. I left in the summer of 2016. You have the stuff with the election. I think like conservatism just changed.
Yes.
Like
Well, everything,
movement
the based revolution occurred.
Yeah, that's right. Red
Yeah.
pill. I'm not red pilled. Like I'm kind of normie, but I'm not like completely normie. I'm still a pinko on foreign policy. I got my Ron Paul underwear on. Don't worry.
Yeah. A guy who's read an American conservative article.
Yeah, and written a few. Now
Yeah.
Well, like actually, what's funny is like AmCon. I'm not devoted to the editorial line on everything, but when it comes to foreign policy, like I find myself still sneaking. I don't know. I shouldn't be saying this on here, right? I find myself sneaking over there and reading the AmCon foreign policy pieces, and
I'm sure Micah appreciates it.
Well, I'm not someone who wants to be sectarian. Like I love National Review. I love AmCon. Like I have friends who write for both of them. I love First Things.
Yeah.
And so I think the kind of sectarianization of all this is actually part of the problem.
You know the one thing all those places have in common? What? I work for them. They're my clients.
That Shad works for all of it.
Yes.
And
So don't say a single bad thing about them.
Well, no, they've all been very good to me.
Yes,
and so this is the thing. Like, someone's like, which one of these things do you hate? I was like, I don't hate them. I like all of them. They've been nice enough to let me write whatever poo articles I managed to cook up, and they
nice save, Miles. Nice save.
We're nice. Well, nice. Yeah, that's right.
The one metric that you could have, and we don't have to hash this out, is it's pretty obvious which ones probably sent you the 3-figure versus 2-figure check.
Yeah, that is true. So if you write enough, you get enough of the 2 and 3 figures to know which one's going to be. So,
which one's going to be.
Yeah, it's funny the ones that pay really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get that Law Liberty fix, and you're like, I'll take that. I'll take that Liberty Fund money.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do this full time.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I mean, our department, Dr. Burrs has written for them a lot, and so guys have always been kind of involved, and so we're lucky in that I think we're a history department that doesn't do political theory.
Yeah.
And that mix is like the worst habit among conservatives.
Yes.
Like, what do you do? I'm a historian. Oh, what do you write on? Like, it's like everybody writes on the same damn thing. I write on Lincoln. And Thucydides. I'm like, what the hell do those have anything to do with each other?
Yeah.
So that's how you're a political theorist. You can mix
well,
and match.
It's sort of like the joke about internet historians, where it's like if you ask an internet historian about anything that's not the Roman Empire or Nazi Germany, and they're like, "Oh God, I don't know what you're talking."
So I got nothing between Caesar and like Potsdam.
Yeah. Rip.
So actually, I have a question about you coming into Hillsdale or just like going into a professional scenario like a history department. How is that different? Because then going into say, I don't know how much experience you have in the private sector, but how's that different than going into any other kind of office? Because in my mind, when you're working among scholars, and we've had numerous, we've had some professors on the show, we've had grad students, where it's like, how do you check, I guess, the inherent ego that has to exist, where people are known for things, or people have written on certain subjects, or people are experts, right? Is there sort of a member measuring contest that occurs when you move in, or anything along those lines? Are people trying to check your bona fides, especially at 29 years old?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So, I mean, Hillsdale is I mean, I have my dream job, and I'm not just saying that for any of my bosses who happen to listen. I actually do.
Dr. Kaltoff, huge listener.
You're going to be surprised. He might be. No, that's a great question. So I worked one, I call normie job. It was between my senior year and my first year of grad school, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll do this. It was working doing analytics for a company. It was it sucked so bad. So like it confirmed my disposition to go into the academy. I think I'll just give an example of like why it works at Hillsdale. I think it's because everybody is confident. I mean, academics have egos. But usually once you get kind of a critical mass of them, they kind of figure out, okay, everybody's actually friends here. And so like for example, I do some American and religious history. I define myself as a social and intellectual historian, but I dabble in religion a little bit. And when I got here, and he's still here, one of the best known historians of American religion was in my department. This is a guy named Daryl Hart, DG Hart. And I knew who he was before I was ever at Hillsdale. And I remember I had read his biography of John Williamson Nevin, and I knew who he was. I was reared Presbyterian, and so I was like, oh man, like DG Hart, like what's he going to be like? And because he's like such a force on the internet. Like, I mean,
certainly.
And
when we have him on the show eventually, we want him to explain his tweets to us. They're an esoteric knowledge.
It's the received wisdom of the old life tweets. What was funny is he was one completely like the chillest guy I'd ever met. And so we're sitting there. It's a grocery store now, but Broad Street Market was a bar back then, and so we went there. And like I remember it was me and like 2 other guys and Daryl Hart, and like we were eating the super fire Cheetos, those red, the ones that are clearly chemical and toxic.
Yes, that stain you for 3 days.
I mean, like who knows? Like you get cancer from eating 2 of them or something like that. And so, but we were sitting there, and he was so completely chill. And so what it did for me was sort of made it easier to step into this role where you have to have a little bit of confidence because you're teaching really bright kids at an elite place. But I had the best department to step into. And I think everybody who is more senior kind of understands like the department is a team. And I know that sounds completely trite. That just sounds like some high school football coach.
But
it's completely real. Like I don't want to work with people who don't want to work with me.
Yeah.
They don't want to work with someone who they don't want to work with. And so, like, at baseline, they're just going to do what they can to get along. And then once you realize everybody's here typically working for the same things, it just made it completely easy. So for me, I was really lucky. I came in, I had an amazing group of friends. I mean, the guys I hang out with are guys I work with.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah,
you don't get that
it
everywhere.
is.
Yeah.
It is. And I mean, Hillsdale, like, we kind of know the mission. So for me, it was super easy. Like, I mean, it was a little bit, like, I mean, if I ever complain about my job, you can hit me because, like, I don't like, my work is, everyone's like, oh wow, you must work a lot. Well, I do work a lot, but, like, I don't really work.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and then plus, you have experience outside of, what some would consider to be the bubble, right?
Yeah,
For-
yeah. I mean,
for non-Hillsdale.
I didn't go to
academic
Hillsdale.
situations.
I found out about the place when I was like 28.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think coming here, it really was kind of special because it's one of the few things that was everything I kind of hoped it would be.
Yeah.
And my hiring process was kind of a whirlwind, but it was amazing. I mean, I remember when Dr. Whalen, senior, he's not senior,
Provost at the time.
yeah, he was the provost.
Yeah.
And hey, I remember I was on the phone and he said, well, I'm prepared to offer you the position. And I said, Dr. Whalen, I am prepared to take it. Like, I was like, it was just great to get a job.
Yeah, so jazzed. Yes, goodness, guys, we haven't even introduced our guest. we got Miles Smith on the podcast. Dr. Miles Smith.
Yes, prolific writer,
Twitter guy.
host of the Paleo Protestant podcast.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and all around great guy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Let's tag that a little
At least
bit
so
at the end.
far in the show.
Yes,
We'll see.
yes. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, who knows? This could all go downhill really fast. I'm just
I
gonna
actually
say,
hate you guys. I've been wanting to say it on.
yeah,
no,
this is the place. This is the platform.
Well, because of my integrity as a broadcaster, we would still put that up. It'd be important that the people heard.
it's the virtue of actually being broadcast honest. I'm impressed by it.
Exactly.
No, this is awesome. I was dodging Dylan. If Shad had asked me, I would have said like first.
Yes, I know.
First time.
I know.
but-
That's true. I'm just too nice. That's the problem.
See, the thing is, we've broken bread before. Can you say the same?
I'm mad at Shad because I wanted to buy the house he bought.
Yes.
But then I actually got the house I wanted, which was my
because
house I was
I've
living
heard you've
in.
got
so-
water nearby. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. It's
Yeah.
true. It's lakes. Lakes. We've got real, vacation options on the east side of town, Shad. So.
Yeah.
So who was the real loser
I
here?
guess
Yeah,
I
that's
was.
right.
I
That's
was.
it,
Well, yeah. I mean, we have to replace the carpet, so I am the real loser. I'm going through that right now.
Yeah. Ostensibly, the show is about something.
Ostensibly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. I mean, people keep saying, oh, did you know that Monomaniacs is about something? And we say, what? I had no idea. Guys, what we do on the show is we bring somebody on and we talk about their monomaniacal obsession, the thing that they're into right now, they're interested in at the moment. Doesn't need to be something they're an expert in. Doesn't need to be something that they've learned a lot about. Just something that's on the mind. So, Miles, I ask you right now, what is your white whale at the moment? What is your monomaniacal obsession?
My monomaniacal obsession right now is a large North American megafauna.
The buffalo.
Buffaloes,
Yes.
but we're going bigger than buffaloes.
Ooh.
So I'm really interested in like how long, for example, an animal that like we know was extinct at the last ice age, like were there relic populations. So this is my completely non-professional curiosity thing.
Perfect.
Like I want to know like where Cro-Magnon man was hanging out with some saber-toothed tigers.
Yes, exactly. Go to that
Preferably
spot.
in like really mundane geographies though. Like, there's La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles. I'm like, I don't want exotic. Like I want some like mastodons in Indiana. Or something
I want to
like
go to
that.
a Dairy
That's what-
Queen and go under the Dairy Queen and find a mastodon.
Right, that's right,
Exactly.
that's right. Well, no, that's been actually like 19th century interactions between people and megafauna. It's
Yeah,
something
okay.
I'm kind of curious.
So as in like the potential for historical interactions between man and mastodon in North America, or as in going into perhaps giants territory, or
yeah.
specifically bison.
Well, so
I know there's actually a distinction between the bison and the buffalo. That's like a
so like
a
bison. There's actually there's a subspecies of bison that's bigger than the plains bison. It's called the wood bison, which is bigger by about 15 to 20%. And so it's the largest bovine in North America.
Still existent, or
yeah.
Okay,
they were pretty hunted out, but there's actually a population in Alberta that they're kept essentially on a farm, and you can tell they actually look different than a plains buffalo if you're trained to know the difference. And I trained myself to know the difference between a wood bison and a plains bison.
Days of staring at pictures.
After literally minutes of hard internet research. No, so there are differences, and they actually do look different.
Yeah.
And to me, what's really interesting is like we think of North America as kind of uninhabited, and that's true in some ways. Obviously, there were indigenous peoples in North America, but I think more than that, like we don't think about this place that has just like millions of animals in it. Like there's a guy who before passenger pigeons were hunted out, like it would take 2 or 3 days for some of those flocks to fly over. Like you're talking about several billion birds. In Ontario one time, a guy, it took him about, I think he said 28 hours
for a whole flock to pass over. So actually, real quick question about the passenger pigeon, and I hope this doesn't derail you entirely, but how did we take out the passenger pigeon? How is there, still buffalo?
Yeah, how do we take out buffalo? I mean, there was like, I think like 70, 80 million is the high side
we shot a lot
estimate.
of them.
Yeah. I mean, like the answer is bullets. That's how we did it.
So that applies to the passenger pigeon too. But like, what did we eat them, or what's the basis
it's
there?
like I mean, so for the passenger pigeon, a lot of it was like early pesticides, stuff like that. So a lot of them ecological, environmental stuff. So that's the story of the passenger pigeon. But there's other animals that like just kind of people move in and the animals kind of ecosystems thrown off. I mean, the Carolina parakeet's a good example of that. So I mean, there's a few of those, especially in the 19th century. That seems to be a major factor.
And tragically, we probably don't even know a fraction of the number of extinct species that occurred, or extinctions that occurred over that century. Just because they weren't being documented in the progression and what's the expansion. There we go. The expansion was so quick. Right. There was not enough time to even catch up on that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, Jefferson thought it would take 1,000 years to settle to the Pacific Ocean. And California became a state 24 years after he died. Botch, Tom.
Yeah.
The only thing he ever got wrong.
Yeah. I'm curious then. So what do you mean by specifically the interaction between man and megafauna? Are you talking about the way in which we our actions as the impetus for extinction, or as in like writings on them, sort of thing?
The way that people understood themselves in the woods. So, for example, like hiking.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm from North Carolina. I grew up hiking in the North Carolina mountains. My parents have a mountain house. We always went on this mountain called Grandfather Mountain. So it's really beautiful, sort of rocky, craggy. It's pretty steep for one of the Appalachians. Mm-hmm. No one in the 19th century would have been like, hey, you know what? Let's just go out into the woods and walk. That sounds great. Because what you know is there's a bunch of stuff in the woods that want to murder you.
Yeah.
And so we just have this kind of hubristic way of interacting with nature. And so what we do is we basically said, okay, we know that there are things that can hurt us. So what we do is we actually sanitize interactions with them to the point that we have this kind of paradigm where either nature is anodyne or it's lethal. And so what you don't have anymore is actually a natural human interaction with nature.
So sort of like the Black Forest thing, right? The spooky other, but there's a great respect, but almost like a mystical respect for that thing.
Yeah, the mystical is a good word for it. Like we forget that North America was kind of this mystical place. And the people who interacted with it that we think of were Europeans.
Yeah.
Like you got a bunch of people who were dad or granddad was born in Britain.
Yeah.
And
the largest thing is a wolverine.
Yeah. Well, I think
or a badger.
So I mean, wolves were hunted out, I think, by the end of the Roman time. Roman
invasion.
Yeah, it's like the 5th or 6th century. I mean, all the animals that aren't on the island of Great Britain. And what's funny about that is the European continent itself is so different.
Yeah.
Like in Spain and Italy, there's still brown bears.
Which is just funny to think. It's like hard to imagine being in the Pyrenees and seeing a brown bear.
There's a video of a guy in the Pyrenees a few years back, or maybe it was Romania, I'm not sure, but he and his son ran into a brown bear.
Yeah. Which I think would make more sense in Romania.
Yeah.
Me, but.
They're smaller than North American brown bears.
Yeah, I
are.
imagine.
And so that's another thing. North American animals just tended to be bigger.
Yeah.
So when you have these sort of tall tales about people running into an animal and they describe how big it is, one of the things that overhunting has meant that the bloodlines, the big animals, actually were reduced. So they're probably about 10 to 15.
Because those are the prize.
Yeah. I mean, think about the story of Moby Dick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the whale that stoved the Essex in, the real ship that was sunk, the sailors estimated it was about 85 feet long. Mm-hmm. Like the outer end of sperm whale bulls that we know of is like 68, 69 feet.
Jeez.
That's the outer end biggest ones we've ever found in the 20th century.
Yeah.
And so there's this idea. It's like, well, maybe they just got it wrong. Or like we've hunted sperm whales so much that the big whales just aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
I've
the same thing applies
yeah.
to plants, right? Trees,
Right.
especially,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just based off of, logging and even just low level particulates in the air, the chemicals that we use for pesticide, et cetera, just, brush layer is totally different than it used to be, right? A good example, actually, as I said previously, is the Black Forest in Germany, where, you literally couldn't see
Right.
in the Black Forest. But now, just because of just basic industrial farming, that's totally no longer an issue. It's like walking through, the Olympic Peninsula nowadays.
Brush. I mean,
Yeah.
as we understand it, looks totally different than people would have looked like. I like to use the example of North Carolina.
Yeah.
North Carolina's climatological analog is central China.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's not anywhere in Europe.
Yeah.
And so what's funny is if you were actually to make a movie that sort of was trying to portray what North Carolina looked like in 1800, you would probably have a better chance of doing it in central China because, for example, bamboo grows naturally in North Carolina.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that wasn't brought over.
No,
by
it's an
anybody.
indigenous type of bamboo. In the house behind the sort of the area behind the house I grew up in, there was a big bamboo stand.
Yeah.
And it's some of the big ones get 3 inches across. I mean, just huge pieces of bamboo. Daniel Boone talks about having to hack down, cane.
Yeah.
And so I think that we sort of think of the South as like this Moonlight and Magnolias place.
Yeah.
And the inverse is like people think of like Michigan as like, oh, it's like an industrial, it's like a factory with some with some fir trees thrown in.
Yeah.
Right. And you think about like 1830s Michigan was a completely terrifying place.
Yes. Well, terrifying, I think, is a really important word here because I mean, just like think about being a colonist, right, in the 1700s and landing.
I'm there.
Yeah. Okay. Right. You land, or you're making your way further and further into the continent, and it's not like, first off, classically, there's no roads; it's just pathways, if there is pathways and etc. But it's just walls of vegetation. There isn't really there's clearings, but not in the way that we imagine them now. Not in the way that if you were to walk up even to the most dense forest, now you're going to be able to wend your way fairly effectively. But literally just hacking your way into something, or just landing on the coast and looking at a forest, right, as just this immovable, terrifying wall of a thing. Just totally different than what we would imagine nowadays.
Yeah, and what's interesting, of course, like our beaches are a lot bigger.
Yeah,
theirs are, because everything used to grow right up onto the dunes. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad. This is one of the reasons why I don't make a super good rad trad. Is like I don't want to go back. I like penicillin. I like running water.
Yes. You like being able
damn
to...
it, I like my seed oils. I said it.
Yeah. I like soy sauce.
Yes.
And sriracha.
Yeah. Well, there is a certain terrifying nature to nature, I guess, that we've totally expunged. There's a beauty to it, though. Like I imagine, which kind of comes across. Dylan actually probably have more to say about like Whitman or et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But
true.
Just the way that the arts interacted with nature was very different because of that mystical element that I think has sort of been, and you could say that part of it could be like scientism and over explanation of, biological concepts, demystifying things. But there was also just more of a danger that was ever present.
To me, actually, it comes down to positivity and negativity. I would say that back in, 19th century America, a lot of the, naturalism writers, people like Emerson and Whitman, all of them had this really high positivity of the potential of nature and what things are going to be like potentially in the future, right? If you look at like writing about nature right now, it is almost the exact opposite.
Right.
It's like, hold up, everybody. This is really, really bad.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm writing about how beautiful nature is to sort of wake you up to preserving it.
The
as
Silent
opposed
Spring
to,
revolution.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As opposed to like Whitman is like, oh, I do not fear nature ending, right? Nature is eternal and will be here forever and consume us, actually. But what I want you to do is appreciate the beauty of it, you know, and to shed your.
It's
your
teleological,
shackles.
but the telos changed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that a lot of that could really come down to obviously the progress that was brought upon in the 20th century, right? Or if you could call it progress, whatever. We're throwing terms around here.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah,
but any dang way, it is interesting.
So back to what I was saying previously. So I was, I'm a bit of a like minor conspiracy theory orbiter. I don't believe in them. I just, find them interesting. And one of the things, of course, that comes up a lot in, especially like Twitter and circles is the giants. The giants were real, that sort of thing. Right. The ultimate megafauna, the large bronze-skinned, red-haired giants. And there's a lot of people who will point to like news stories in the 19th century, and they'll be like, Lincoln was alive when this was written, and some guy will be like, oh, over there, the giants live there, that sort of thing. Well, what is your read on that phenomenon? As not just megafauna, but mega humans,
or just like cryptids in general.
Yeah, cryptids, just period.
Yeah, I mean,
other than Michigan copper, which sort of proves the whole thing. But
so I don't know about giants. Like, I mean, there's obviously, like the Old Testament has like affirmations, and of course you have like people are like it's the Nephilim.
Yes, well, in the King James version looms so large over the 19th century, it's really hard to separate that.
I don't know. I think that I'm not so committed to scientism.
Yeah.
That I'm willing to rule out like anything.
Yeah.
After all, we shot down some UFOs this week.
Yeah.
So, hey, there you go.
Yeah.
By the way, like, as a guy who grew up, like, on Independence Day, like, I'm like, okay, well, if it's going to be an alien invasion, that's my expectation.
Yeah.
Like,
the world will come together.
We have Joe Biden, and it's going to be, like, basically, like, not even, like, fun Mars attacks. It's going to be, like, crappy Mars attacks.
Just as tragic without any of the joy.
Yeah. So I think, like, Sasquatch is like, you would be far pressed to get me to sign onto something that said it would be impossible for a
Sasquatch
large
to be
primate to exist in the American Northwest. There's just weird stuff that I don't know enough about, and I'm also willing to say, I don't think we know enough. I don't think the Academy knows.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, think about something like the coelacanth, which was something that was supposedly, extinct for like 60 million years, and they haul one up in South Africa in 1938.
Yeah.
Like Thunderbirds. Mm-hmm. Like, I wrote a piece for American Conservative.
Yeah.
I guess it was like 2 years ago on Audubon. So here's my like hard evidence of be careful what cryptids you say don't exist.
Yeah.
So Audubon in his Birds of North America, one of the plates in there is a animal called Washington's eagle.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And the plate is magnificent. It's just incredible. And Audubon says, hey, this is Washington's eagle. It's huge. And it's a sea eagle that's in the Midwest. So there's sea eagles are eagles that typically basically nest on rocks.
Yeah.
The bald eagle is kind of weird in that it's not a true sea eagle and that it will sometimes nest in trees. But he painted it and he said he shot it, but he never collected a specimen. And he said, I saw it once on the great upper reaches of the Mississippi, which would be somewhere up in Minnesota, and then once at the confluence of the Green River and the Ohio River, which is near Owensboro, Kentucky. So he said those are the two places he saw it. We don't know. We've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Like no one has ever sort of found an eagle the size of a condor. Because that's what he described. He basically described an eagle the size of a condor.
And what, like for wingspan, what would that be?
That's, high side 10 to 12 feet. It's just a huge bird. like
massive.
Yeah, so condors can be 36 inches tall, 40 inches tall. So they're huge birds.
Mm-hmm.
And so like my proposition is like this is either it's either a mistake. He's made a mistake and he misidentified, mismeasured something. He just
which
lied
isn't like him.
Yeah, which isn't like, or he lied. I mean, Audubon could be sensational at the time, but I've never seen any other plate where no one's like, we don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Or it's kind of a miracle that he's found this bird that either went extinct or is so rare we've never seen it. And so that plate, I think, just gives me enough pause to be like, you know what? I better be careful about saying something definitely doesn't exist.
Yes, yes. I'd say that probably the difference would be that there are some, more extreme cryptids, like, and I'm actually having a hard time reaching for examples, but
Jersey Devil
actually is kind of a good example, right? Where it's kind of difficult to, there might be some sort of actual biological equivalent or something that people have seen consistently, but it's hard for me to imagine that there is a horse with wings that's running around.
Yeah. I mean,
except for it's not a Pegasus, it's a bad one.
Right.
They're bad wings.
It was seen by famous people. Stephen Decatur said he saw it, and Joseph Bonaparte said he saw it. But I'm sort of like you. I mean, I think that, again, I'm also willing to say human error is a real thing.
Yeah.
Like people like talked about sea monsters for ages, and like never imagining that certain type of whales existed.
Yeah.
And so
or like just large sturgeons even. There's this video running around on Twitter today that was just this big ass sturgeon.
15-foot sturgeon. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Like the Loch Ness Monster, I have no idea what it could be.
Well, it's dead now, so.
Yeah. They got it.
Yeah.
We got him.
Yeah.
They shot him down over the Great Lakes.
Things that have been killed this week. Yes. UFOs and Nessie.
And the American Spirit. At the end of the Super Bowl yesterday. The city of Philadelphia was also destroyed.
That's right.
Goodness. Guys, first off, this is a good time as any as good of a time as any to thank our patrons out there. Thank you so much, our patrons, for helping support the show and allowing us to do things like get a new camera, get new microphones, right? Make this join up a little bit. Yeah,
to the best of our ability.
Yeah, there is rumors about a potential studio in the future.
That's true.
Don't get your hopes up on anything, but there are cards.
There are whisperings.
Yes, that could be played within the next month or so that could lead to a studio. So think about that. If you're interested in supporting the show, we could really use the help for that regard. Well, first off, I got to thank our top patrons, Joe Papalardo, Sammy Roberts, Zach and Amber Strehle. Thank you so much for your contributions. And first and foremost, if you pledge to the Patreon, right, you get access to the episode a day early at the $1 tier, and get to be on the Discord. The Monomaniacs Discord. We play games and stuff, and we hang out and we chat. It's fun.
Do you guys have a Twitter feed?
We do.
Yeah.
It's I'm not like
it's for promotion.
It's for promotion.
You'll get tagged in the tweet.
Yeah.
I like to follow, quality podcasts.
Yeah, there we go.
Wow, you hear that? We could put that on a banner, put it at the top of our Twitter account. That just says quality podcasts hyphen Miles Smith. Right, Dr. Miles Smith
hyphen Michael Scott.
Yes.
Hyphen Miles Smith.
Oh, goodness. And at the $5 tier, you get access to the Patreon exclusive episode, which we record after this, and things get a little bit spicier on that. So if you're interested in that, cool. But at the $10 tier, most importantly, you get to ask questions of our guest and us that they will answer on the show, hopefully. Though, you are completely within your
right of refusal.
Yeah. You could say no. Okay. So this is a question from Samuel Roberts. All right. This is a great question. All right. I'm so glad he thought about this, because this is exactly the kind of man that we need to ask this to. Nick Rowan, who was on the podcast in the early days, defined America as basically New England plus the Midwest. After that, it is a different country. Right. The South is a different country. The West Coast is a different country. How would you define America from a geographical perspective? I guess geographical and cultural.
That's a great question. Yeah. So like Virginia and North Carolina are kind of these transition zones between what we think of as like the Northeast and the South.
And I think their history in the Civil War is a good indication of that.
Yeah. They're a little bit late to the party. I mean, I think of myself as a Southerner. I mean, if there is such a thing as a Southerner, I'm one of them. I was reared in a non-suburban, town. My hometown is Salisbury, North Carolina. It was an old textile town. Is maybe 29,000 people I was growing up. It's a little bit bigger than that now. It's not a suburb. It's just far enough out so it doesn't really have a suburban feel, but it's not, a billion miles away from anything. It's about 40 miles from Charlotte.
Yeah.
But it was still Southern, I mean, it was still a place where there were kind of these habits where I knew people talked and sort of interacted in certain ways that they didn't outside of not just necessarily the South, but even like the part of the Piedmont that I'm from. So, I mean, not only is there a South, there's these kind of smaller regions. I mean, like for me, culturally, where I grew up, you can basically take it from South Carolina almost to Pennsylvania. It's that Piedmont region. And so,
but would you say that is within the sphere of America, like culturally?
Well, I think so. Like, I think Nick's from the DC suburbs, right?
Yeah.
So he has a very East Coast centric perspective.
Well, it's just also that there's people who are Americans in a way that I will never be. So when I when I lived in Italy, I studied abroad in Italy, and the neighbor across the way was this British peer. And I'm not going to say his name, just off chance that one of he's passed away now.
Okay.
And he was just like so unbelievably nice to me. And I figured out why. He actually told me, he's like, "Oh, you're from the South." Like, and he had read like every single book on the Civil War you could find. He had that great like patrician smokers where he a million. That's what he was, an actual baron, And so he was like, "Oh, I just love the Civil War book. It's fantastic. The Southerners are so much more like us," which isn't really that true.
Yes.
But like
that's a very specific view.
Yeah, from the generation of people who wrote books in the early part of the 20th century and the middle part of the 20th century, there was this kind of kitschy thing where the South were just like some, throwaway Britons who got left on North America, and then they finally. There's a great book written in 1957 that kind of does a highbrow look at this. It's called The Cavalier and the Yankee.
Yes, I was going to say it's the Cavalier structure
by William Taylor.
Yeah,
and that's a really well sourced, like very scholarly, sort of analytical book. But I mean, I don't know. I'm still really American.
Yeah,
I mean, if you take me anywhere else, like my habits are like not. My habits aren't like Southern. I mean, I eat hot dogs.
Yeah.
I do stuff Americans do. I think the biggest difference between me and someone who's raised in the rest of America is it's just some folk. I mean, some speech ways.
Yes.
And a couple social dispositions. So, like, I do think of them like Southerners as being a little bit more relaxed. We are just kind of more chill, and like. Socially,
there was this one particular war where they had no chill though. There's very little chill going on.
No one was really that chill.
It's true
in that situation. General chillness was not very
at an all-time low,
a national low.
We wrote a lot of really important books about how there was no chill.
I'm going to do that in Civil War class next time. What caused the war? Well, it was slavery and no chill. But no, I just think that there's like interpersonal interaction. So the way that Southerners kind of are at parties, the way they are on the street is different. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, right downtown for about 6 years. And guess what? Like it's really different. Like people are talking to each other, people are yelling at each other.
Yeah.
Like it's just I mean, my throwaway term is the South's a little bit bougier.
Yeah.
But like it's also a little trashier. And so like the South does trashy and bougie
in a different way.
Next level.
Yes.
Well, I mean, for all of JD's faults, having read Hillbilly Elegy, right?
Although I don't know if you can consider. I mean, is Arkansas like?
He's from Kentucky, right?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's the proliferation of like that Kentucky Appalachian sort of perspective into the rest of
which I think is really different than the South.
I was going to say.
I mean, again, I think like maybe from the most basic of categorizations, people place Kentucky in the South, but I think you're right.
Well, so like where we are right now is much more culturally quote unquote Southern, as most people think of it, than where I grew up. In North Carolina. And I think so when people say Southern, what they really mean is working class rural.
No, I think that's true.
Working class rural or like secret rich racist.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of like what it maps on.
What
to
a Venn
for people.
diagram.
Yeah. And so
The
like
coalition.
yeah, what's funny about that is
Yeah.
like you can find Southern places all over the country, and I
Yeah.
think this is why the imagery of the South has gotten co-opted by rural working class people everywhere.
Yes.
So,
So,
like,
yeah, I mean, in Washington State, of all places, we had Confederate
yeah,
flags.
the battle flags
Yeah.
everywhere
Yeah.
where there's people who kind of feel like the federal government craps on them.
Yeah.
So like
And that's the foundation of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of like an anti-establishmentarian symbol.
Yeah.
And so what's funny is like I mean, it's not even the Confederate state flag. It's the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
And the reason why people use it has very little to do with any investment in like resurrecting the Confederacy thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, I hate the government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Middle finger with my Confederate flag, you know, like
Yeah. It's mostly, I mean, it's just to be put on trucks with huge spoilers.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I see it more here than in my home county.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that Confederate symbolism has kind of morphed into just rural symbolism
Yes.
in general. And I didn't grow up out in the county, so
Yeah.
I didn't see the battle flag a lot growing up.
Interesting. And
Makes
now,
sense.
now that you're in rural Michigan, of all places,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's on the way to the airport, if we ever have to go to Detroit,
Yeah. there's the flag
there's
store.
that
yeah.
guy, yeah.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Well, we got to do at least one more question before we move on, folks. We got a question from, even though he is not a $10 patron, he did ask a question, and he seems to be very interested in you hearing it. This is Chris McCaffrey. He says, "I want to hear about his favorite brand of mayonnaise."
I hate mayonnaise. I assume that's
okay.
why I like
Hey,
this.
brother,
trap.
solidarity.
This is another like thing. Like, there's this idea that people in the South like mayonnaise.
Yeah.
I loathe it. I can't stand it. I don't know very many people who like it.
Yeah. I'd always heard that the way that you can tell where your distance is from the Mason-Dixon line is how much mayonnaise they put on a hot dog. That's what I always
the
heard.
farther south you
Oh,
go.
further
I
south.
don't know if that's true at all. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen mayonnaise on a hot dog.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think it's so funny. Like, people have these assumptions of the South. When I was in Italy, we got placed at dinner, me and a couple colleagues with some Australians, and they found out that we were from Charleston. And this was before like the Bravo TV show. That what was it, Southern Proper? or something.
Oh, I don't have no idea.
It was
I'm not a
one of those
I do not
like
understand
it was one of
Bravo.
those sleazy TV shows
Yeah,
that
yeah.
only 23-year-old girls watch.
Yeah.
First year out of college, and so these Aussie girls were just asking us questions, and finally this girl from Australia who had lived in Atlanta goes, "Guys, they're Americans. They're not from Oz." Like, and I was like, "Yeah, I literally live in a house, or kind of like an apartment, and do like normal stuff."
Were they like, oh, wait, do you live in a split level?
Well,
or
no,
is like
they
what?
all assumed that like it's like Gone with the Wind still.
Yeah.
and-
got palatial
because of like,
estates, yeah.
is that because was the Bravo show sort of this like, you know, everybody lives on a plantation and kind of goes to, you know, high class dinners and whatnot, like Old South sort of thing?
Yeah, I think. I mean, people don't realize the South is really suburban.
Yeah.
Like most, of the
Like most America.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like most of the population, the growth in the South is coming in
Yeah.
the suburbs. I didn't grow up in one, so maybe I am a little bit of a weirdo in that sense.
Yeah.
But I mean,
that is the only sense in which you are a weirdo.
Yeah.
There are no other.
that's it. That's it. Roman numeral? No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Everybody totes around the Roman numeral 4 on the back of their name.
Yeah.
But no, I just think that people kind of have these assumptions still. I mean, but it happens in places like Michigan too. Like everyone's like, "Oh, what do they do in Michigan? They build cars." They haven't built cars here in like 50 years, right?
No, we save GM. I don't know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
okay, yeah. We saved GM. Yeah, okay, wink.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I always just kind of imagined. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure it's the same way where, except for in a larger sense, right? Because you're talking about generalizations about an entire region with a
Right.
very diverse history. Because, like, in my mind, New Orleans, as a specific example, has virtually nothing in common with the rest of the
Yeah,
region,
I mean,
right?
yeah.
And to a certain extent, most of Florida, especially after the Cuban Civil War, right? Just totally different country, basically, than what you would see in New Orleans. And so,
But I think the average person that you would walk up to on the street would be like, all right, so Florida, like how much of the South is it actually? They'd probably be like, well, not that much.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Well,
the South stops at Orlando. or
yeah.
something
Well,
like
so,
that.
but I'm saying that as far as those generalizations are concerned, I mean, we grew up in the Pacific Northwest, just outside of Seattle, And for us,
and I don't like mayonnaise. I know it's crazy.
Good for you.
Yeah, I love mayonnaise. It's the best condiment.
I actually have a quick question. So this is for a fellow mayonnaise hater. If you go to a fast food restaurant, I'm not saying that you do, because I'm saying hypothetically, you go to a fast food restaurant.
You go to that trough, the seed oil trough.
Yeah. Or say you even go to like a small town bar, like if you went to the Hunt Club, right? Would you order your burger without mayonnaise? Would you clarify no mayonnaise on that? Okay.
Like I'm that
because I have this weird thing where if I don't know there's mayonnaise on a thing, it does not matter to me. But the second I realize that there's mayonnaise, it all falls apart for me.
So
you're a true mayonnaise hater.
Yeah,
for me, it's psychological.
You've eaten tuna salad.
Yes.
Gladly.
No,
Often.
I'll eat things that are made with some like mayonnaise as a like component.
Yeah.
But like mayonnaise is a standalone condiment. No, I like guard against that.
Yeah.
I take it very seriously to not eat it.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, it's tough to eat sandwiches with only mustard on them for your entire life, dude.
Very dry.
Yeah.
Very dry sandwiches. Oh goodness!
The list of things I could talk about hating in mayonnaise would be it's like a whole nother podcast. So.
We'll have you on
Save
again
that for the Patreon.
Yeah, we'll talk about mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Goodness. All right. So just to get us back to how are we doing on time, by the way? 47. All right,
Great. We got plenty of time.
We got enough good amount of time left to go. So I wanted to first hit, because we usually ask this question, what was your sort of thing that brought you into the conversation about the megafauna of America, right? Like, what did you see that sort of was the spark that was like, oh, I'm interested in learning more about this.
You go to
now.
one of those drive-through
It's such a-
zoos, that's rural America.
It's such a stupid answer. I'm embarrassed to say it. So I went with when did The Hobbit come out?
Oh gosh.
Oh man,
2000. Oh gosh, we were in
Like
8th grade, I think.
it was either 2012 or 2013.
yeah. So I went on a
Oh
date.
no, that was
2012.
2012. Okay, so I went on a date to see
oh,
The
so
Hobbit.
your sophomore year.
Yeah.
To see The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And I forget who I went with actually. So we're sitting there.
What's your name and address?
I hope you're not listening. Person.
Yeah.
So we went and like we were walking out, and the girl was like, "Thorando was riding a moose. That was crazy." And I was like, "That's not a moose. That's an Irish elk. It's extinct."
Yeah.
And I realized like how much of a complete freaking dork I sounded like. She's like, "Okay," and I'm like, "Seriously though, it's an Irish elk."
Yeah.
So I just realized that like I instinctively knew and was interested in this huge animal that somehow Peter Jackson had gone like it totally not canonical at all.
Oh, yes.
Like he was like, you know what Thranduil should ride? An Irish elk. Because that's an animal that would have been in Middle Earth.
Miles, what are you talking about? Peter Jackson cares about the canon a lot. That's why he made the Hobbit 3 movies.
Right. Yeah. With a bunch of stuff that's like from the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. So actually, the Irish elk specifically. So is it Irish?
Yeah, so it's this massive. I think it's the largest deer that's ever lived. But I mean, the moose is about as heavy as it is. But the Irish elk's like the antler span could be up to like 12 feet. So you're just talking about this huge animal.
Yeah.
And so I was reading about Irish elk. I think it was just a Wikipedia thing, and I went down like everybody who's an idiot does.
Yeah.
Like went down like a 4-hour Wikipedia trail where I got into the depths of Wikipedia. Like Dante has not seen the levels of Wikipedia that I've seen. So anyway, and I realized that there was in the 19th century, guys were talking about elk weighing like 1,500 pounds, being 6.5, basically talking about elk being the size of horses.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've seen big elk. Like I've seen even 1,000-pound elk. It's huge. But I was like, this is bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just realize, okay, that the reflex to say, well, they didn't get it right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that works. Like I think that there's some really big elk they saw, and so they're interacting with elk with like this kind of almost reverence and awe. I mean, we kind of have that, but they're sort of like, I'm in some sort of mystical place, and that's a huge animal that I've never even thought about interacting with.
So we mentioned this sort of in passing earlier, but would you say it was the lack of understanding that drove that? Like, do you think by over-categorization, and over-analysis, and we remove that mysticism, right? And, there's less of the common man or even the academic looking at say an elk and seeing it as sort of, that mystical nature entity as opposed to just something that is, just an animal, right?
I don't think it was that, because I think that we kind of assume. So we assume enchantment as a category.
Yeah.
That no one in the 15th or 14th century sits around going, "Hey, don't you just love how we have an enchantment?
Yeah.
Don't you just love how we're enchanted?"
Yeah.
Like they're like, "Oh, it's real, like just a hell of a bad time that our descendants aren't going to be enchanted." Like, they're not thinking that way. So I actually don't think it's that. I think that they are actually experiencing something that no one on, for example, Great Britain.
Yeah.
Is the biggest deer on Great Britain is the red deer.
Yeah.
Which is a big deer, but nowhere near the size.
Well,
of
I mean, you got to keep in mind that the upper class's primary form of hunting was the fox, which is a difficult animal to hunt, but it is not intimidating.
Right.
And if this was any sort of proper country, then the most important thing for the upper class to hunt would be trying to kill them.
Right. Trying to kill foxes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, so there had been elk on Great Britain, but it's just not like the experience of interacting close with that type of animal.
Yeah.
Isn't something that any Briton would have had in a very long time. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of years.
Yeah, and I think proximity is very important in that respect, because I mean that could have been the case, I guess definitely in Roman times, right? When they're cutting through the brush for the first time,
It is funny just how, like, when you hear about now you hear about somebody being killed by a mountain lion, like it's a freak accident, right? And considering how many folks who have large Instagram followings hike every day, it's wild that that's something that isn't that's not, they don't even view it as a threat. People aren't even really, the real survivalists are prepared. They've got the whistles. They've got the, they know how to interact with a dangerous beast, but it's more of a remote thing that could possibly happen, right? Rather than just like, oh yeah, you're going to the woods, you're going to probably run into / be hunted by a large cat.
The idea of going into the woods without a gun is so completely modern.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you think about, 150 years ago, if you guys are from Washington State, like, I'm just going to go walk through the Cascades, like with some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and some beef sticks.
Yeah.
Like, no one would have done that. So.
Yes. Well, especially a place like the Cascades, when verticality is your enemy. It's the history of the Pacific Northwest, which I feel like most Americans don't care about, which is funny because we had to take a history of Washington State course, the classic public school move. And I remember we had a PE teacher turned history teacher who I took Washington State history with, and we got to the Great Depression, and he said, "Look, this is the only thing I find interesting about this entire curriculum. It didn't happen in Washington. It just didn't. We're just going to spend 2 weeks talking about the Great Depression, totally separate from what this class is supposed to be about.
Everybody here,
people moved out here and logged." But it's not like we had towns, okay?
Yeah. Seattle's got a pretty interesting history.
Yes,
they
does.
washed the city away.
Yeah, you can
flatten it out.
You can still take a tour of the old city and
Seattle Underground,
and et cetera. Yeah, the history of the Pacific Northwest is wild because it's just Scandinavians and people who didn't fit in anywhere else. Because if you were a right-thinking individual, you were going to California, right? You were not trying to go to the Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
Well, Oregon is funny because the settlement of you guys say Willamette, right? Not Willamette, Willamette.
Yes,
it would be
right?
Willamette.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's right. I've just been told.
Well, no,
I don't know what's right.
Because so many things are named after Native American words and phrases that the Willamette would be the pronunciation.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have that too. It's just that, Cherokee words are just more common.
Yes. You're not talking about Snoqualmie.
Yeah.
Sammamish.
Yeah. Not a lot of Q's in Cherokee.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We're from a place called Snohomish.
Oh, I know. Okay, I know where Snohomish is on the map.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. No, but it's funny, but kind of related to that a little bit. Even when my parents were growing up in the 80s, which says a lot about our age, but when my parents were growing up in the 80s, it was still basically wilderness, right?
Really?
Even in the last, because as people, people had been there for a long time, and the World's Fair was in Seattle in the in the 60s, et cetera. But even in the 80s, they weren't anywhere near Seattle. They were like a few hours, towards the Cascades, like right at the foot of the Cascades. Actually, it's kind of where they grew up. And a few years ago, we went up to where my dad grew up in this small town in the middle of the mountains.
So is it north of Seattle? Then?
Yeah, northeast.
Yeah,
northeast.
The Cascades run and sort of split the state in
Right.
half.
Yeah.
And so if you go from Seattle over the mountains through, holy smokes, why can't I remember the name of the pass? Stevens Pass. Yeah. Up Stevens Pass, it's basically just straight up the mountain.
So is it drier? So is it kind of
drier?
It becomes basically a desert on the other side. It's very beautiful, but like my dad basically just lived in a mountain, right? You feel like you're in Scandinavia where there's just a river and you can't see more than a few hundred feet because on your right side is just forest and mountain, and on your left side is just forest and
so
mountain.
Your dad grew up in Twin Peaks.
Yeah, basically. He lived up in Twin Peaks with just as much weird petty crime and whatnot. He was like always telling stories like, at that point I was like sleeping in, I was living above this bar here. He just pointed at this random bar. I was like, we were sleeping up there. It was wild. I couldn't get sleep a lot of the nights. I was like, okay, wild childhood. But, even in the 80s, it was totally
even
isolated.
Now, when you drive up there, it feels like you're in rural Montana sometimes in regards to the amount of population like per square foot.
That's so. I mean, it's still really alien to me.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go up, like the joke still is that there's nobody that lives past index, right?
Yeah.
Besides Vietnam vets who do not want to talk to anybody. Like, that is the demographic. Like they came to a place to disappear.
That's why like northern Idaho and Montana are where all of the like the white supremacists,
prepper types,
the white supremacist enclaves, like actual white supremacists, not like the blanket term, but like
I feel like there's a type of conservative Christian that's really attracted to like the Northwest as an idea. I guess I'm enough of an American.
Yeah,
unlike you, colonial freak. I just can't do it. I mean, North Carolina is not a huge state. There's just under 11 million people. There's I think 10.8 million people in North Carolina, but most of those people live in the middle third of the state. So where I grew up, my hometown was 25,000 people, but there were about 4.5 million people in about a 60-mile radius.
Yeah.
And so it was just never. It was never like I felt like I lived in the middle of nowhere.
No.
Even if I didn't live in a big place.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that Washington, and this is a little bit off on a separate tangent, but people often talk about the rural versus urban divide from a political spectrum, right? I think Washington is one of the most concrete examples of a state that is a blue state that, from a surface area perspective, maybe 1/6 of the state, right, on one completely separate region. It's not even spattered and speckled, right? Once you cross over the Cascades, it is nothing but red communities, right, as you go across. And so it's almost as if, and people often talk about this, the left side of the state makes the laws for the right side of the state that, is miles and miles away, right?
That's why there's this thing, I don't know if you've heard about it, called Cascadia. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
Yes.
I wrote something for National Review about the idea of secession a few weeks, or I guess a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And so I've seen this. I mean, which is, again, so different for me because in North Carolina, and I think in the East Coast in general, cities are blue, and even smaller cities are bluish. And so you just can't go... you don't have these swaths. Or you've got really conservative places.
Yeah.
But if you live in most counties, guess what? You're going to, your county seat's bluer than your...
Yeah.
It's not like some of the, some of those places out west where it's it's a farm town that basically blew up and is the county seat. And it thinks just like the rest of the county.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is interesting.
Yeah. It's an interesting.
Could it create more factionalism? I don't know.
Depending, I mean, there is a lot of urban-rural resentment in those states. That's for sure. You get to see that a lot firsthand.
But they're kind of like the homesteader dream, right?
Yeah.
You can go raise your own chickens and have 1 billion kids.
I mean, that's what our grandpa. He just got sick of living on the coast, and he just bought literally a shack in the mountains. And then his wife, our grandma, was like, no, I'm not moving out there. He's like, I'll see you if you come out, and they just moved out there and started building the place up. She moved back out there eventually, and now it's, they've got a pool. It's like a totally different.
That's civilization,
scenario.
man.
Yeah.
People with pools are libs.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's true. Yeah. That used to not be the case about Arizona, which, everybody has a pool in Arizona. Now it's changed.
Not the place we grew up in.
Yeah. Spent 2 years in.
Yeah.
Not grew up.
Oh, okay. Where?
In Mesa.
Okay, yeah. Greater Phoenix.
Greater Phoenix area.
I vacationed one time in Scottsdale. It was really nice.
Yeah, hopefully not in the summer. Scottsdale.
No, we went in December.
Yeah,
it was really nice.
Yeah, Scottsdale's nice. I don't know if you've ever been to Flagstaff up further north.
I haven't. My exposure to the American West is limited.
Yeah. Well, if you were to, as a scholar,
the colonies.
Yes, as a scholar of American history, specifically 19th century, I feel like you should have spent a little bit of time in Utah. But
I have been to Utah.
Yes.
And funny enough, I do in fact teach about the denizens of Utah.
Yes.
In our Jacksonian history class, which you guys are more than welcome to sit in on.
Yeah. Well, I've already taken it. I took it with Dr. Berzer when he taught it when you were not a Hillsdale employee for that brief period. But it's the American West is its own weird creature.
It's a really interesting place, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in Texas for a long time, which is not the West in so many ways. It's Norte Mexico still.
Yeah.
Which is it's a very different place than the rest of the West. But
it's funny, and the question of what is and is not America, I would say Texas technically is not America because they're so America. At least they're self-reported to be so America that they have separated themselves from the rest of the country in a strange way.
Well, Texas is like Bavaria, so the idea,
that's a good indication.
Like the idea of lederhosen being something that Germans wear. Like nobody in Germany has ever worn lederhosen except for Bavarians.
Yeah.
But like a couple key placement things in telemedia, everyone's like, oh, it's Germans and lederhosen.
Yeah,
it's like Americans and
cowboy
boots.
It's not even Bavarians because my wife spent a lot of time in Bavaria. She lived in Germany for a while, and she was like, it's the same kind of guy in America who would wear a cowboy hat everywhere, right? Where it's kind of people who are really into being Texan, kind of more often than not kind of fogey-ish, being like, I'm really into this thing that we're doing here. And Bavaria is a lot like that too. And also, same level of kind of like insular, kind of like Christian conservative for what is possible in Germany is kind of also reflected in. Yeah, that's a really good comparison.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. Like Munich's a wonderful city. I had a great time when I went.
Yeah, that's where Rebecca spent a year in Munich. It was a wild place from what her indication is.
The Hofbrauhaus really is that cool.
Yes. So I've heard. Goodness. I got to get out there sometime. Germany.
The Vaterland for us.
Technically. But I don't know if I'd call it that.
Yeah, it's true. I would have maybe on a public forum say that.
As a person with very, very little, if any, German ancestry, I'm feeling a little suspicious right now.
You didn't know what kind of podcast you were hopping on.
Yeah, exactly.
Just cue up God Save the King.
Oh, yeah, I forget. You're an Anglophile.
Yeah.
So much so that you're an Anglican. Yeah, you're an Anglophile.
Yeah, I'm about as Anglo as you can get.
Yeah.
95% of my
ancestry. And here you were saying that the South isn't English transplants.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't want to say that because I don't want to just play to type. But I'm also I am. So I've got 95% England and a rando Spaniard in there for some reason.
I don't have much. I don't know if we have much time in the hour left, but I'm curious what you think about the meme now considered, I guess, a meme because of it's become very popular. But the Albion seed theory sort of thing by typifying Americans based off of
I think that book is really is onto something.
Yeah.
He wrote it so long ago. I think it's kind of been through a couple permutations when it came out. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, this is right." Then people were like, "Oh no, he's oversimplifying it." And I actually think there's something to it though.
Yeah.
We teach it. I mean, I still teach it. Because I think it's useful to understand the different folkways.
In what course?
American Heritage.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there? I don't remember. Is it in the reader or
no? I kind of use it to kind of frame those documents that are in those first two chapters.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, I think we're kind of running out of time here on the hour. Okay, so we're going to probably slide into the Patreon as long as Miles will allow us
I'm
to.
Good to go.
Can we get some?
We'll call a break and then
Okay.
We'll get you some water.
But in the meantime, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Hopefully the podcast, your Twitter handle.
The podcast is coming up. I know that Dr. Moss and Dr. Hart and I don't know why I don't use their first names. Daryl and Corey and I we've got another one on the way. And so the department's kind of in good shape in that we're writing, and I think we're sane conservative academics. Like that particular mix sane and conservative and academics. It's kind of hard to come by. But,
yeah.
But somehow you're doing it.
Yeah, we are. Like, I
goodness.
haven't been to a Stop the Steal rally yet. So
Yet? Come on, Miles.
Yeah.
listen, what I'm worried about is the vote for best dressed history professor. And
There
if
you
Dr. Hart gets that again, I'm definitely stopping the steal. So.
You can't beat the fingerless gloves.
You can't.
The guy has one lanyard with the Maryland flag on it. People just go crazy for it. So
I mean, you got to respect the Maryland flag.
Yes,
I will stand by that. I will stand by that.
To double on this again real fast, it is the Protestant Paleo
Protestant podcast.
I listened to this podcast. I cannot believe I did not remember the name of it.
Yes, podcast. Is there actually a reason for that?
Yeah, I think that's actually what they call them in the UK. And so,
okay.
as an homage to that, actually, what's funny is Dr. Moss has like no British ancestry. He's MAAS.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's German.
Yeah, because he's Lutheran, right?
Yeah, he's Lutheran.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, definitely.
Anglicans with bad potlucks.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've never been to an Anglican potluck though, so I can't make any
my
estimation.
Anglican potlucks were in the coast of South Carolina, so the food was, I'm happy to report, very good.
Yeah.
Not like cream of mushroom soup or whatever Lutherans do.
Yeah.
That is just bias against the Midwest right there. That was just pure hatred of the
As
Midwest.
having a lot of Lutheran friends, actually, real quick, I've said this before, and I don't think on the podcast, but the fact that Lutherans are the absolute best, especially Midwestern Lutherans, at ruining a perfectly good party by saying, man, wouldn't this be great if we brought out some cards? It's the worst thing. We gotta stop the Lutherans.
Like going to play euchre or something?
Yeah. Or, Parcheesi or whatever. I don't know. And they were always like, oh, this is a trick-taking game. You'll get it in 5 seconds. Never the case. Never the case. All right. Well, peace out. Hope you guys hop onto the Patreon as well. And thanks again for getting on the show.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Fantastic.